All good? Okay. Yeah, that's not what I want. Yeah, that's fine. So, assuming that you can hear me at all. Yeah, the microphone's doing the thingy. You can hear me. Probably. Maybe. I don't actually know. There. Right. Anyway, this is going to be really dumb. If you can't hear me, I'll probably just pull out and do episode 1 again next time I decide to do this. But welcome to Connor's Waffling. That's me. Yeah, I am notorious. I should probably explain what waffling is. Waffling is my version of rambling, basically. It's this thing where you can just be in full flow of a conversation. It's not like your general little small talk, chitter chat sort of thing. It's where you're really deep into a topic, but I don't know if it's bloody ADHD or something kicking in, but you don't stay on that topic very long. There's what's the word? Tangents. I am the king of tangents. Although don't ask me to calculate them because I haven't done that in 2 years and I hate circles. But yeah, that's waffling. And most of the people I know find my waffling quite annoying. But not annoying. I'm being too harsh. It takes up a lot of time waffling, as you can imagine, and not everyone has the time for it. But I always have the time for waffling because it's frankly quite enjoyable. And sorry about that. I thought to make a little podcast of it, just because talking to yourself, that's weird, that's crazy. But if you're doing it to a camera with people that are definitely watching right now, yes, 100%, then you're making content. You're not talking to yourself. So I came up with a couple ideas beforehand to talk about, because that's usually how my waffling starts. I'll be sat there scrolling the internet or just thinking to myself, and I'll just see things and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And then if I start talking about it to someone, I'll end up talking about 20 different things, nothing related to what I was originally talking about. But you need that catalyst. So I noted down a few. Got a lovely whiteboard, which you can kind of see. But yeah. So that's what waffling is. And that's what this is going to be. So yeah. First thing I wanted to talk about was something that I thought of literally 2 minutes before putting the camera on, is this concept of common sense. Now, common sense, as I'm sure you're aware, is this idea of stuff that everybody knows. It's a sense that is common. Funny that people do tend to name things appropriately. Tend to. That's a whole other can of worms. English is weird. But anyway, common sense. It's like something I have a notorious history of being poor at. Whether it's looking for things and not looking in obvious places, or only doing half a job, because apparently I wasn't explicitly told to do it that way, but it's just common sense. And it's led me to this idea. I personally don't think common sense is real. I think it's just a nice, neat, tidy way of saying a thing that is blatantly obvious to you because you learned it at some point, and you are surprised. You're surprised, surprised when someone else has not learned this thing. And therefore it seems ridiculously obvious to you because you learned it so long ago, it becomes second nature, like riding a bike. And that's what I think the concept of common sense is, because the idea of common sense is that it's information that everyone knows. And if that were true, then nobody would ever not know it, because everyone does. But nobody knows anything ever. Like, besides how to breathe, not even that. You spend like a good couple seconds after being born figuring that out. But it's everything we know and we do has either been taught to us or we've learned through trial and error, through discovery, through reading, overhearing people, whatever. And common sense is just that idea that there's a group of information that doesn't fit in that. And I don't think that's true. Don't get me wrong, there's times where I've used the terminology common sense, and the whole lacking of common sense thing, that's just, you don't know things that a lot of the people around you do. But it's like people, like younger people, like my age, younger than that, even like millennials in your 20s and 30s now. It's funny to say that millennials are that old. But I digress. With technology, you find that the whole stereotype is that old people haven't a clue with technology, and yet to younger people, like say, using your emails, for example, younger people, it's second nature. It's, well, obviously you just click this or press that or read that or do this, whatever it is. I'm not going to come up with an exact example. I can't be asked. But it's true. It's second nature. Whereas some people that have grown up their whole lives with minimal technology, it's completely foreign to them. It's like VR, for example. First time I put on a VR headset, because I knew a lot about VR and the associated technologies with it, I didn't have a lot of difficulties when starting out using VR for the first time. You could say setting it up and using it was common sense to press certain buttons and do certain things. But then other people I know, it took about half an hour of me trying to explain it for them to even be able to put the damn thing on and use it properly. It doesn't mean they didn't enjoy it. They had a great time. But it's difficult to explain things that you see as obvious, as opposed to something that you can appreciate is difficult, hard to come by knowledge. Like, I think I personally would have an easier time explaining like A-level mathematics to someone than the arithmetic that you get taught at the age of 6. Not because A-level mathematics is easier, But because like addition and multiplication and stuff like that, to me, would fall under common sense. And now I know a lot of people that isn't the case. Not just young people. Like dyscalculia is a very real thing, and I appreciate that. But it's as I'm not judging people that suffer from that because that's not right. But it's more a case of because that topic comes so naturally to me. It's hard to explain something, the way you do it, if it is, you have to break it down into its more basic components to the point where you meet a level of understanding between you and the other person. It's like, right, so you want to explain imaginary numbers and how I is the square root of -1. Well, first you have to, no, you're never going to be able to explain that to someone if they don't know what a square root is. Okay, well, a square root, that's the opposite of squaring something. Well, what's squaring something? Oh, that's when you times a number by itself. For what's timesing? You start breaking it down until you meet a level ground, and then you can build up knowledge from that. But when, in your perspective, you hit what is common sense, you can't break it down below that. It can be broken down below that, because obviously you would have had to have it explained to you at some point. But it's because it comes intuitively to you, you can't. Or at least you find it very difficult to decompose that level of simplicity from your perspective. So people just throw it off as, oh, well, it's common sense. You should know that. And I don't think that's right, frankly. But frankly, one thing you will know, and yes, I'm saying frankly a lot, you will learn that. I do say, I've got like catchphrases, buzzwords. But you will learn a lot in this podcast thing, that there's a lot of things that I don't think are right. There's a lot of things that I do think are right. Do I think the world's changed because of it? No. I'm not some dictator that thinks, oh, what I know is right and that should be the case. Some things that I think are wrong, lots of people agree with. Some things I think are wrong, kind of controversial. That's the beauty of opinions. I think that's kind of lost in the modern world. Because, yeah, opinions are very dangerous now. Like I was looking at the old saying, what was it? Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. I think that's kind of outdated. It's very much sticks and stones may break my bones, but at least that's all they'll do. Because words can be so dangerous now. And I'm saying this like I'm some 50-year-old man that's lived a life, and I remember back in my day. I'm 19, for God's sake. I don't know an awful lot. And frankly, I don't think anyone can say that they know an awful lot about everything. But I'd like to at least be able to say I'm a decent judge of these things. Not because I've got a wealth of experience behind me, just because I think I'm fairly reasonable. And I know that's not always helpful, because humans aren't built on reason. That's what computers are for. They're the tried and true reason of everything. Humans are built on both logic and instinct, and emotional thinking and all that. That's, what makes us human, as the saying goes. But yeah, definitely more to one side than the other, especially when I'm waffling. But who knows? It's not me to judge. But yeah, as I was saying, world is a very different place than even in my childhood, and that was not all that long ago. Like how, like swearing, for example. Swearing has become far more commonplace, I find, than when I was younger. Like when I was a kid, and I mean like 10, 11, 12 sort of age, swearing was, it was a thing that you knew grown-ups did. And you know it was not the right thing to do. You shouldn't swear at people. It's rude. It's inappropriate. It's not allowed. Stuff like that. But it's like you weren't oblivious to it, but you obeyed that. It's when I was like a kid and in my early teens, I didn't swear. I don't think I swore until I was 14, 13 maybe. And I knew people like my age that had sworn younger than that. Like I had friends that had sworn probably from the age of like 9, 10. But it was a very common thing. You don't swear in front of adults, especially parents. It was a secret thing. You would swear in front of your mates because it was cool, and yet you felt powerful and grown up and mature because you were using the angry, shouty words that only grown-ups use. But nowadays, that's not the case. It's very commonplace for young children to just say whatever the hell they like. Like, for example, I've overheard in the street and whatnot, kids that look like they definitely should be in primary school saying fuck and shit and all sorts. Like, I'm pretty sure I even heard someone say the N-word, which is outrageous in general, let alone a child. But that's just how it is today. Like I've heard a story from my dad. He was sat in his car waiting to pick up my brother, and he just happened to see one of his mates. And bear in mind, they're like 13. I've had at the time, I think they were like 10, because obviously this would have been a good few years ago. And it's one of my mates just looks at him and is like, "Oh, what the fuck are you looking at? Oh, proper road man type." And they're like 10. They're like not long in secondary. And you could see the look on his face when he found out that he was one of his mates' dad. They like their face went pale, and it was, "Oh, I'm so sorry, don't tell my mum." But it's the same mentality of they know they shouldn't be doing it, but it's that apathy. It's the concept of you shouldn't do this means a whole lot less to kids nowadays. Like kids seem to feel as though they've got far more authority. Now, I'm not saying just you crack the whip and tell your kids what to do, and if they step out of line, you throw them in a dungeon. But you know, you don't want to get laxy-daisy with letting your kids do whatever they want, because then they just don't grow up to be good people. And I know a 19-year-old boy with no kids giving parenting advice. I'm not trying to give advice, I'm giving my opinion. But it's very contradictory to adults nowadays. How everyone, I don't want to say soft because I don't think that's the right word. Everyone feels more empowered to complain about little things. And my theory is it's not an attention thing, it's a sympathy thing. People, it's subjective, always been the case. People feel nice when they get sympathy. That sort of attention, that caring, nurturing, protective attention, is something people like. It's something that humans sort out from birth. It's we want to be nurtured. It's a human trait. Human instinct is to look for that. But there are only two ways to get that kind of positive feeling from other people, and that's sympathy and praise. Now, praise, you get praise from success. Like, I know the whole participation award malarkey is trying to counter that, which is still silly, but that's another topic. Praise is difficult to get because it's succeeding, not always easy. But you still want that positive feeling. So sympathy is the other option. But you can't get sympathy if there's nothing wrong with you, which is just life. Thankfully, life isn't always a living hell. You don't always need sympathy, which is great, because that implies that everything is going okay. It doesn't happen very often. And sometimes when things do go wrong, it's a small thing. It's subtle. Which in and of itself is a nice thing. Because when it's inconvenient first world problems and all that, you'd much rather that than the alternative. But that's not enough for some people. So what's a good way to get sympathy when there's something wrong? Make something wrong. Now, this was a big thing when people years ago were accusing those with mental illness as attention seekers, whether that be stuff like depression, anxiety issues, to stuff like schizophrenia and whatnot. Even stuff like ADHD and autism, people called it attention seeking. But A, that's objectively not true. Not exclusively. I'm sure there have been cases of people doing stuff like that for attention, which is awful. But it's doing stuff like that is difficult. It's laborious to have something wrong with you. Be like the equivalent of, I want sympathy. I know, I'm going to go jump off a roof and break my leg. Great way to get sympathy. Also involves a leg breaking. So, pros and cons. But what if there was a way to get sympathy with just pros? Well, an easy way to get sympathy without physical or mental anguish. And I mean directly speaking. I'm not saying there's no anguish at all. I'm sure there is. But it's to be part of an oppressed minority. Because and especially lately, and rightly so, there's been a huge sympathy for those. Whether it's in a more wider sense, feminism and anti-racism protests and all stuff like that, which is fantastic. I'm all for that. But it is objectively true that is a source of sympathy, deserved sympathy. But you can't, change your race. Well, you can't. I don't know why I hesitated there. Then there is feminism, pro-women and whatnot. And then there's the support of the LGBTQIA. I genuinely don't know what the full title is anymore. And I have a problem with that format. Not the support, absolutely. I'm all for it, but it's a case. How's the best way to put it? I think people are looking for sympathy, and it's the quote I use is, "I've read somewhere," and it's almost certainly satire. But it is a good point. Is there is a gender that's referred to as mayonnaise on a chair. Obviously, that is quite a step from claiming people that are like, well, people that are transgender, from people that are heterosexual, and people that are homosexual, and like, the whole tree of it. But that's quite a distance from where it was 30 years ago, for example. Now, if I were to meet someone that identifies as mayonnaise on a chair, I would absolutely love to have a conversation with them. Not to mock them for being called mayonnaise on a chair and that's a stupid name. No, just because I want to know where that came from. What thought process led to that? Because humans are a brilliant thing. And that's where our minds can take us. Our minds have taken us ridiculous places. They've taken us to the bloody moon. There's a whole conspiracy with that. But let's say they've taken us to the moon. I would like to have a conversation with that, because as someone who is the straight white male that the whole, throughout all of history, claimed the fame of that we always had the power, blah 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 blah, which is just tragic, the way humans are so terrible to each other. But I would like to know, for no reason other than curiosity. And I mean, that's the entire point of this podcast, is curiosity. I waffle because I like finding information. I don't know, I get a buzz from knowing something, even if it's completely useless. Something I will never use, something that's never applicable, something that's never going to affect me or my family or anyone I know ever. Something that's maybe not even going to affect humanity ever. Like, oh, by the way, the sun's going to explode in 4 billion years. Knowing that was interesting. That's pretty cool. Well, supernovas and all that. Never going to see it. Nobody that will ever know who I am will ever see it. To be honest, with the way humanity's going, I think this race will go extinct. Long before the sun, supernovas, and the heat death of the universe, humanity just won't last that long. Not that I'll ever live to know, but I just don't see it happening. So that's me. I love random jargon. Speaking of random jargon, I feel like I've gone into an absolute rabbit hole of controversy. So let's bring it back to something interesting and not crazy. Prince Rupert drops. That's the other thing I've got noted down here. And Prince Rupert drops, if you don't know, is a phenomenon that happens when you drop glass, molten glass, into water or some other liquid and rapidly cool it down and solidify it. And you can see videos all over YouTube and whatnot. You blow torch, glass rod, drop falls in water, Prince Rupert's drop. And it's this beautiful looking teardrop of glass with this really thin, wispy tail. And the unique thing about it is all the heat stress that's going on within the glass makes the head of a Prince Rupert's drop ridiculously resilient to blunt force. Like, you can find people hitting them with hammers, putting them in hydraulic presses. I think people have shot Prince Rupert's drops and it's shattered the bullets. Now, it's not indestructible. Like, I've seen people use like hydraulic presses laced with titanium or whatnot destroy the head of Prince Rupert's drop. But they can survive, they can sustain like over 20 tons, 20,000 tons. I think it's 20,000 tons. It may have been 20,000, but a lot of force is my point. And yet you break the tail. It's literally just thin, wispy wire almost of glass. You break that, the whole thing explodes. And it makes you think, well, is there any practical use to that? Is there any practical use for a Prince Rupert's drop? And I mean, no. I have seen that you can like use a blowtorch to like a proper high temperature one and vaporize the tail without breaking the head. You just melt it away. And then obviously you can't break the tail, and there's no fragile part anymore. It's just a ridiculously sturdy ball of glass. And like, you think that could you use that as like a shield? Like, get a bunch of them lined up in this frame, hold up, and it could, you know, protect you from something. And I genuinely don't know if anyone's tried that. Because, frankly, making a Prince Rupert's drop is quite difficult and quite inconsistent. So, yeah, Prince Rupert's drops. Very fascinating little thing. It's stuff like that. You know, those niche sciences that don't, like, they seem like they don't have a purpose, they don't have a practical use. But that's all of science. Nothing in science has a purpose until it does. And that's the beauty of science and mathematics. It's the same with like inventions. Like, you think how useful certain inventions are. Someone had to think of that. Like, someone had to think to make a phone. Someone had to think to make a table. Someone had to think to make the light bulb. Someone had to think, if I use this very flexible string-like piece of fiber that I found on the floor, I can use it to tie this sharp rock on the end of a stick. And like, almost all inventions, especially older ones, they seem fairly obvious, almost easy to understand. And well, yeah, I could have come up with that. It's not a difficult thing to think up. That's because obviously we've experienced it. It's like the idea of, oh well, I can make an axe just by tying a sharp rock to a stick. Well, yeah, of course. Axes have been around for thousands and thousands of years, basically as long as we have. So yeah, it's going to be obvious. And like the internet and computers and phones and all that sort of stuff. It's so second nature to us because we live with them. We're around them all the time. So, leads to the question, what's next? Well, I don't know what's next. No one does. Nobody's ever going to know what's next. What's the next big thing that we invent? Because if we knew, we'd be doing it. Like, yeah, you can make like fantastical, imagine like we're gonna build a time machine, we're gonna build flying cars, we're gonna build a spaceship to go to Mars. It's, yeah, we can fantasize about all these ideas, but executing them, wow, do you know how to make a time machine? Do you know how to teleport? Do you know how to get 8 billion humans to another planet several light years away? No. That's the beauty of invention. It's coming up with an idea in a way that you can actually obtain it. And that's the unique thing about humans. It's, if we weren't unique and had our own opinions and way of looking at things, we'd never invent anything. Because you need unique ideas to invent things. And that uniqueness is why things like insecurity about oneself is, from an objective standpoint, foolish. I'm not saying if you have doubts about your own ability and whatnot and you don't think you're good enough that you're an idiot. No. Because that would be a bit hypocritical. But it's that idea of, what's the saying? Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. That could be applied to anything that you can have an opinion on, not just appearance. Because things are subjective. Like your intelligence. Yeah, there are objective ways of looking at it, but none of them are perfect. Like IQ, for example. That isn't a perfect test of intelligence, even though it's got the word intelligent in the name. It's merely a test of stuff like pattern recognition. Hence why all your IQ tests are just, oh, here's a bunch of circles and squares. Some are shaded in, some aren't. What's the next one in the pattern? And that's what IQ is. It's stuff like pattern recognition. Then you've got like academic intelligence, where it's like, oh, I have a degree in biochemistry. Oh, well, I have a, there's so many fields of academics you can have knowledge in. And all of which different. And then there's not even academics. You could have knowledge in how to look after children. You could have knowledge in construction. You can have knowledge in a specific way that a certain company asks you to fill in this financial report, even though you're not qualified to do it. You still do the job well because you know it. That's intelligence. Because you know something to a high level of understanding. And so it's, if you don't think you're smart, it's just because you're judging yourself on a criteria that your skill set doesn't apply to. Like me, for example, I will admit I do know a lot of random nonsense, a lot of random trivia. But there are far more things I don't know. Like, even in the fields I think I've got a good knowledge in, like I'm a fairly good mathematician. I have an A level in further mathematics. But I couldn't tell you half the sort of stuff that they teach you at A level, let alone, like, I've got a mate that's at university studying mathematics. I could not tell you what field, I don't actually know. But they probably know far more about maths than me. It's while it can come across as disheartening, it is true. There is always someone that knows more about something than you. Everything you think you know well, and everything you think you don't know very well, there is someone that knows more than you. And there's someone that knows less than you. You may not know this person. You may never know this person. You may end up being the least educated person in a specific topic that you will ever meet. But you may be the most educated person in another topic than anyone you will ever meet. Doesn't mean you're the smartest at it in the world. There's going to be someone out there that knows more than you. But it's you can't objectively say if you're intelligent or not. Other people can say if they think you're intelligent based on whatever standard they're choosing to use. If they're judging your standard based on your emotional intelligence, your EQ, then you're going to get different people registering as intelligent to those people than someone that judges based on your IQ or judges based on your common sense. And that's the beauty of opinions. Someone that would be seen as the most unattractive person on the planet to one guy is the person of their dreams of another. Someone that is terrible at gift giving to one person may come up with the most thoughtful ideas ever to someone else. That's just how it is. And so is that idea of people being afraid of being alone, people that are afraid that people don't like them, people that are afraid they're not good enough. You just haven't found the people that think that you are yet. They certainly exist. Humans are too unique and too plentiful for there not to be someone that thinks you're awesome. There are going to, just as much so, there are going to be people out there that think you are an awful human being. Absolutely terrible. Are they right? In their books, yeah. Yeah, they are. In your books? I'd hope not. In someone else's books? Absolutely not. They've got no idea what they're talking about to someone else. That's the decisions that we make as a person. If there's something about us that someone doesn't like, you got to take that as an opportunity to think, is that something about me that I like? And if it isn't, well, you can make the decision to change that or not. And some things can't be changed. So the decision there is to find a way to accept it or to utilize it in a way that is good. And if you do like that part of you, that idea about you, whatever, the question then becomes, is their opinion differing from mine enough for me to warrant not wanting to speak to this person anymore? Because people are only in our lives because we let them. Unless you're like a kid and it's the person looking after you. You don't really have a choice in that. Even then, to an extent, you do. Because, child protection services, yada, yada, blah. It's... People say choice is an illusion. Because there's always something in control and something powering over everything. Not right. And I don't think that's true. I think there's always a choice. It's just sometimes the world makes that choice difficult. Because it's everyone has a choice to do or not to do anything they want. There are sometimes consequences to those choices. The only time we don't have a choice, the only thing that we're not able to do is things that break the laws of physics. You need to break it to you, no matter how hard you try or how much you want to rebel. Einstein and Newton's laws, they don't really like being disobeyed. You kind of have to, keep below the speed limit of the universe. You can't just phase through matter. Well, I mean, someone's going to comment on like quantum shifting and all that, because of course. Why wouldn't you? But the point is what matters. And the idea of choice, every choice has a consequence imposed by both ourselves and those around us. And that is why people think choice is an illusion. Because it's like, you have the choice to go out there today with a knife from your kitchen and brutally murder the next person you see. Now, that is a choice you can make. I could go do that right now if I wanted to. But I don't want to. Because A, I'm not a murderer, but also I am aware of the consequences imposed on both me from the outside world and my own morals imposing a consequence on that. I would feel guilty and I would be arrested. Doesn't mean I can't make that choice. It just means by my standards I would have to be a moron to make that choice. And that's fine by me. Everything in life is up to you. Will you make the right decision? Will consequences come and upset you, annoy you, piss you off? Damn right. But that's fine. That's life, as they say. It's like, what was it? Like how you spend your time, for example. I, right now, am making this podcast and playing a bit of FIFA because, multitasking, it's a lovely thing. But I could quite easily be laying in my bed doing absolutely nothing. I could go and reorganize the way my bedroom is arranged. I could go outside into the freezing cold, butt naked, and start screaming at random people. I could go and take down all of the Christmas decorations for no reason. But I'm choosing to do this because it's what I want to do. The consequences of that is that my time is not going to be used for anything else. I'm not going to be making progress on anything that I would want to make progress on. But those are the consequences of my choice. And I accept that. Because this is what I want to do. And it's like people that are working in like poor working environments, like me living in Bicester Village. Terrible thing. Terrible place. Awful. Pretty. I understand why tourists come there. But yeah, awful place. Does it mean that I would never work there? No, I've worked there before. And I was aware before I joined Waffling. It was that Bicester Village is notorious for a poor work environment. Did that stop me? No. Do I regret it? No. Paid well when I was a teenager. As a teenager, it's when you're looking for a job, it can have money, please. And that was that. I worked there for a year and a half, I. But it's people say that they've got these terrible working environments and they can't get a job anywhere else. And they're like, oh, I can't leave this job and go look for another one. I have to work here, blah, blah, blah. No, you don't. There is no such thing as have to. Having to do something is a construct that we make because we have evaluated that any consequence is better than the consequence of that choice. And therefore we decide that we have to do something a certain way. Just like as the example I used earlier, I have to obey the law. I don't. I'm just choosing to because any consequence of my decisions is better than the consequences of being arrested for committing a crime. And therefore, in my book, it's easier to just say, I have to obey the law. And that is what there is always a choice. If you don't like your job, you can quit. Now, yeah, the consequence of that, you will be unemployed. You will have to go find another job. And that may be difficult. You may not have the skills or the qualifications to get a job you want. So you'll have to find a way to get those qualifications. And that will be difficult. That will require a lot of time, effort, and it may not even be possible given the circumstances. If you would want to do that, you'd have to change your circumstances. There may be a lot of steps involved in achieving that. And that may seem overwhelming, impossible. It's not impossible. It's just very challenging. And very challenging can be enough for some people to put them off from doing whatever it is they want to do. And instead, what's the saying? Better the devil you know. People would rather suffer in an environment that they're currently in than to risk the difficulties in finding a better one. Especially when there's a lot of unknowns. Because that's really, when you break it down, that's the only thing humans are scared of. The unknown. It's every fear with enough mental gymnastics can be boiled down to that fear of not knowing what's going to happen. Like the biggest fear in the world, I can't remember it's one of them, at least second, is the fear of death. And that's a prime example of it. People aren't particularly afraid of dying in a literal sense. They're afraid because it's the one thing that we don't know what happens. We know from an outside perspective, when someone dies, they don't do anything anymore. They lay there, they decompose, and they're gone. But obviously, as a living person, I've never died before. You, watching this, will have never died before. So it's the question of, well, I don't know what's going to happen when that comes around. Because it will. That's life. Unfortunately, people die. But it is an unknown. There is no way to know. But that's what's the scary thing about it. It's like I like people that are afraid of heights. You're not afraid of heights, you're afraid of falling. And the reason you're afraid of falling, because if you fall from a high height, you can get hurt, you can die, and you don't know what that's like. The only other form of fear is the fear of something happening again. The whole fear of repeating. Like, I'm afraid of heights because the last time I was that high up, I fell and broke my arm. Well, then, you're not afraid of heights. You're afraid of what happened the last time you were high up. You were afraid of something happening again. And it's those two things put together really epitomize what fear is. It's a defense mechanism. It's the body's way of telling you, yeah, something bad can happen right there. Maybe don't. And that contributes to that idea of choice. It's, yeah, I could choose to go up high, but do I want to go through the uncomfortable feeling that my body's giving me because it's afraid? Is that worth it? That's what choice is. It's the determination of, is the thing that I'm considering doing or not doing worth the effect, the consequence? And we make that decision millions of times a day, sometimes subconsciously. And it's, especially the extreme ones, we make very subconsciously. And when we do actually become conscious of them, that's what intrusive thoughts are. The whole standing on the edge of a high cliff and thinking, oh, what if I just jumped? Obviously, you'd never do that because you make the reason, well, I don't want to do that because that would be bad. But you still think it. And you do that all the time. The human mind is constantly thinking about what choices it can make. The problem comes is when you don't notice one's there. That's when you get stuck, is you think, there's nothing I can do. There's always something you can do. It's just you can't think of it. And that's what talking to people is for. Humans, as I said, so very unique, think in so very, very different ways. Ask someone. If you think there's nothing you can do, it's not because there's nothing you can do. It's because you can't think of what to do. Or you think you can't think of what else to do. You can't think of there being another option. So if you tell someone the situation, you tell someone the choice you feel compelled to make, they will at the very least be able to comfort you about the consequence and be aware of, well, what those consequences may have an effect on you. Saves them questioning you later. But also, their unique mindset, they may be able to find that other choice for you. Or at the very least, it may not be the right choice. I'm not saying go ask someone if you're having doubts about a choice and do exactly what they say. Absolutely not. Humans are reasonable people. We can make decisions for ourselves. But talking to other people and getting ideas from them is fantastic. Because we may be given an idea that we didn't have before. So now you've got another choice to make that whole consequence evaluation. And now I'm starting to blank. So I think that's where I'll call it for this one. I will, I don't know when I'm not gonna make this a regular thing. I'm gonna do this whenever the hell I like. And yeah, I just waffle. That's all I'm here to do. And as I said, if you wanna, like, I will be able to provide enough ideas for these all the bloody time. But I won't say no to suggestions. But yeah. Thanks for putting up with this. I hope it was at least half as fun as listening to it as it was telling it. And no promises that I won't repeat things. I'm notorious for that. But cheers, guys.